Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are both very excited to be talking to you about a brand new film out on Hulu now. It's a Hulu original called No One Will Save You. Do you have a synopsis for us, Monsieur?
I do. So, as you said, this is a 2023 film, and it is directed by Brian Duffield. It stars Kaitlyn Dever. I don't know how to pronounce this name. Elizabeth Kaluev, Zack Duhame, Lauren L. Murray, some other people. And the synopsis from IMDb is, as such, an exiled, anxiety-ridden homebody must battle an alien, actually several aliens, who's found its way into her home. So what we're going to do, since this is brand new, we're going to give our overall general thoughts, and then we're going to come back and really go in depth with the plot, because I feel like we need to talk about the whole thing. So if this is a movie that you want to watch and you have Hulu, don't allow us to spoil it for you if you want to see it, because there's a lot to it. So what did you think of it, Christopher?
I enjoyed it. I was impressed by it. I had seen the trailer popped up on a bunch of my various feeds. It is horror. It's not my first go-to. I don't rush to that corner, especially if it looks scary, and the trailers did make this look very scary. It's very well made, and I think it looks great. It feels like a very small film. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, it was written and planned as though they would have maybe a limited budget, and they were prepared to make it. I don't know what the budget was on this. It is a few locations. The scope of the thing is sort of one small town. So they go to the police station and they're on Main Street. But they're mostly in interior houses and in the yards of those houses. It's a small cast, and it's essentially a one-hander. I mean, it is this young woman. What's her name? Kate,
the actress's name or the character?
Dever.
So her name is Kaitlyn Dever.
Kaitlyn Dever, right? Who looked familiar to me, but I didn't recognize her from her other work. If you look up her other filmography, there's definitely some recognizable stuff. But I thought she did a fantastic job. It does really just follow her. And there's about 90 words in this whole film. I'd say it may be short of a silent film. It feels throughout like they are deliberately trying not to have characters speak. There are a couple of scenes where you would expect people to talk to each other, and they make it plausible that they don't, but they don't. And I think that's really interesting. That's something I'd like to get further into. But what are your first blush thoughts?
Yeah, so I would echo a lot of what you've said there. I thought this was very well done. She, I felt, is fantastic. It's got to be, I would imagine, not being an actor, but I would imagine having to act without speaking for almost an entire film is not easy. Because a lot of this is just screams and grunts and sighs and that kind of thing. I also would imagine it's probably difficult to write a script for a feature length film without any dialogue. Because you think, last week we watched Inherent Vice, which is almost nothing but dialogue,
Right.
So, very, very different films. But yeah. I really, this was a little bit on my radar. I had seen some things about it, but knew very little about it going in. It sort of plays like a home invasion movie, except it's not people invading her home. It's aliens. So I thought it was really well done. And I think maybe now at this point, we should get into the plot because it's kind of hard to talk about all of this without that. But I thought it was very well directed, very well acted. So this is your warning that we're going to spoil this. So initially it starts out with her character is named Bryn, I think is what the name, Brynn. Yeah, Bryn. And so this actor is around 25, I think, or 27 or something like that. I thought she was a teenager when it starts. I thought, oh, this is her parents are going to be somewhere, or whatever. Well, we don't really get a lot of explanation on this, but we don't know anything about her father. There's a little bit of a flashback with her mother, but her mother is no longer living. And she has, I guess, inherited this big, beautiful farmhouse on the outskirts of this small town. And she had a friend named Maud that we learn more and more about as the film goes on. But initially, we just know that Maud has died about 10 years earlier. And Bryn writes letters to her, even though she's no longer living. And there's one scene where she goes and visits her gravesite. But we then find out she's basically sort of an outcast from the other people in this town. And there's one scene where she actually goes into the town to the police station, and this Maud's father is the chief of police or the sheriff or something like that. And she almost literally runs into Maud's parents and is kind of surprised to see them. And the mother literally spits in her face. So we know something has happened with Maud that she is being blamed for, and basically nobody in the town likes her because of this. So pretty early on in the film, we see this alien comes into her home, and it's kind of what we think of as sort of like traditional gray alien with the big head and the big eyes. And she has to battle it, and then we see there are more types of aliens. There's kind of a big sort of spider-looking thing with long arms and legs, and she battles them as well. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the plot?
Yeah,
I don't know if I missed anything up to that point.
Well, one of the things that struck me about this film is it gets right to it.
Yes.
Right. I mean, normally
there's not a lot of setup.
This sort of inciting incident at the 10-15 minute mark of a film, right? And they'd spend some time developing Act 1. And you don't really get into the, the kind of meat and potatoes until you get into sort of Act 2, closer, well into the movie. In this one, we establish who she is. We establish that she lives alone in this house and that she's got this whimsical little model of the town. We establish she doesn't really have anyone, and so she puts herself to bed at night, and we see that she's got a friend, a picture of her BFF, and we get all that in. Then she goes to bed, and then she hears a noise, and so you think, oh, okay, here we go. And it's raccoons, but then she hears another sound, and she goes to check, and the front door is open, and you're like, well, that's never a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
And like right then she sees something moving around in there, and you think, well, it's a person, but it's making alien sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go, wow, that was fast. But then the thing, she makes a noise, and the thing comes upstairs looking for her. I mean, we see it right away. It's like, here's a girl. She lives in a house. She's all alone. You'll probably learn more about that later. Uh-oh, someone's in the house. It's an alien. You know what I mean? And it's right there.
Mm.
So you go, oh, okay. And one of the things I really like about this movie is that it continues to up the ante.
It does, yeah.
So it's like, well, if the first thing that happens 10 minutes into the movie is that she sees a very obviously alien in her house, where's it going to go from here? Right? And it does a pretty good job of tripping that along. I will tack a small critique to that, in that while it does a good job of constantly raising the stakes and up in the ante in ways that you're like, well, they can't, how are they going to go bigger than this? And they do. I think a lot of the middle and the second part of the movie, it'll be like, oh, well, there's another alien in the house. So she goes in the basement, and then she hears something in the basement. So she goes outside, and then she sees something outside. So she goes back in the house. I'm like, well, there's an alien in the house, but that alien's not there anymore. Or, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, really, if we establish these alien intruders are looking for her instead of just poking around, and because there's a fair amount of that. There's a lot of her hiding behind things, covering her mouth so she doesn't, doesn't squeal or breathe too loudly, while an alien is just kind of poking around.
Mm-hmm. Or
looking for her, but slow. There's a lot of hiding from the Velociraptor, like that scene in Jurassic Park. But there were some times, and I didn't, it's not that kind of movie, so I didn't go back and parse it all out, but you're sort of like, she gets away from one, and then she kind of runs into the lap of another one, and then she's running from that one. And I'm like, well, what happened to the first one? I mean, aren't you now running from two of them? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I feel like the movie starts some threads that it kind of conveniently abandons, in part by artfully upping the stakes, and in part by just sort of being like, we'll never know where that other one went, but these aliens aren't telling us what they're up to, so don't worry about it too much. Focus on the thing you're afraid of right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a minor critique because I think they do it pretty well. But in a movie in which a lot of it is you're in an interior trying to evade or escape an intruder, which becomes intruders, it loses the math sometimes. Mm-hmm. You're like, wait, wasn't there one in the dining room? So where's that one? You were just literally 3 minutes ago, you were hell-bent on getting out of the house. But now you're hell-bent on getting back into the house because, you know what I mean? Yeah. Wouldn't you still be scared to go back in that? You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah, so I guess we'll just work our way through it.
Sure,
so this alien shows up, and sure enough, there's the reveal, and they have this kind of telekinetic technology or power.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these sort of beams of light, like you'd expect from the flying saucers, that sort of can slurp people up into the, they beam them up. But they also could use whatever this is horizontally, and the aliens themselves have a sort of a telekinetic power where they can levitate objects and blow open doors and freeze her and lift her up and turn her around.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first alien finally catches up with her, and she's grabbed like the steeple from from the town hall or something that's pointy and has a little bell in it. I like the little bell.
Yeah.
And so the thing she's running for the door, and the thing grabs her and then whips her around in like a pirouette, and her arm holding the thing flings around almost inadvertently and skewers him right in the temple, like sinks this thing right into the head of this alien. You're like, oh. And for a wild moment, I thought, oh man, is the premise of this that the aliens are coming and this is like E.T., this is one of the kids?
Oh.
And she kills one of the aliens' kid, and that's no one will save you from the angry alien parents who are coming to avenge their child?
That didn't occur to me.
It's not that. But so she gets up the next day, and this thing is still lying dead in her front hall, right? And she sees some townsfolk behaving oddly, and she gets the bright idea. She's like, "Oh, I'll just leave town. I'll get out of Dodge." And she gets a bus ticket. And on the bus, there's clearly some sort of possessed.
I want to interrupt you for just 1 second. I liked that because people never do that in movies. It's just like, hey, let's just leave. Let's get away from here.
And it's great because she doesn't talk about it, but they do a really nice nonverbal moment where you see her she sees a bus and you see the light bulb go off. She's like, I'll just leave. Like, I don't need to stay here.
Yeah.
I'll just run for my life,
Yeah.
Because we don't know yet, but nobody in this town likes me. And that turns out not to be good because there are some town people that are sort of possessed by the aliens that are coming after her. And it wasn't clear to me, like the bus driver didn't seem to be possessed. It didn't seem like everyone was possessed. I didn't know why they were coming after her in particular. Versus, say, the bus driver.
Yeah,
like, why? They was as though they're like, oh, you can't leave town. But it's sort of like, why? What's the big deal? You know what I mean? She does seem special in this movie, and not just because we follow only her. But it was never quite clear to me why the aliens seemed to think that she was special. Right? She's trying to leave town. Why are they stopping her?
I read an interview with the director, and I'll talk about some of the things that he said when we get to the ending.
Okay. Well, I've been talking, so you pick it up.
Kind of explain some of that. So she kills the one alien, and then I think the next alien that comes along that she fights there's like a little alien that sort of looks like the gray aliens, except he's little. It's like he's almost like a dwarf gray alien or something.
He's little with big hands. He's got like big arms. Yeah.
Big hands. And she fights him and kills him. And then there's the kind of spider type one that I was talking about, where it chases her. And one of the reasons why she tries to take a bus is her car won't work anymore. So they've seized her car or whatever to where it will no longer work.
None of the power in the house.
Yeah, all the power is out and everything.
The water works and the gas works, but the electricity doesn't work.
So that alien tries to get her, and it gets, I think she like jumps through the car or something, like runs through the car, and it has these big gangly limbs, so it gets stuck in there, and it punctures the gas tank trying to get out, and she lights the gas tank and blows it up. So I think that's 3 that she had killed at that point.
Yeah, she's racking up quite a good body count here.
Yeah. So then she let's see, is it around that point where the aliens trap her? And so the other townspeople that she sees that are under the control of the aliens, you can see that there's something moving around in their throats. And so the aliens freeze her inside the house in this kind of sort of tractor beam thing that they have. And they insert this sort of squid-like thing into her mouth.
One of them kind of coughs it up like a
Yeah.
hairball.
Yeah, exactly. It coughs it up and then it goes into her mouth. Well, then we have this scene where it's like everything's back to normal for her. Her house is all,
Everything's
restored and
perfect.
everything. Everything's perfect.
Her best friend is there. Her mom
Her
is
best
there.
friend is there and her mom is there. And of course, okay, this is, she doesn't know this, but that they've they have her under their control thinking this. And I don't remember exactly what happened as to why she breaks out of that.
Well,
Does she cough up
it's
the
well
thing?
done. She sort of realizes this is all too good to be true. Like there's a part of her that's like how sometimes you're in a dream, you realize you're dreaming and you go, wait a minute, she's dead. She can't be here. And she even says, I don't remember if it's her mom or if it's Maud, but she says, I'm sorry, Maud or mom.
Yeah.
And she shoves her hand down her throat and rips this thing out. And then she's back. And then it's like waking up from the Matrix. She's filthy and sweaty and tear stained,
Right.
and she's back in the basement.
And so is that where the point where she goes outside and that she throws the squid thing outside and then the tractor beam comes down? Yeah. I don't know if I'm skipping some stuff.
We skipped some stuff, but these are the broad strokes. Then the escalation is that she ends up in the ship.
Well, so we want to. There was one. Is it before that the squid thing is there? The tractor beam comes down, and then the squid thing grows into a duplicate of her.
Oh, right.
Is that before she goes up into the ship?
That's before she goes up in the ship. Yeah. So right. So
which that was a really great scene, I thought.
So this thing that she's ripped out of her throat, the beam hits it. The beam is sort of their everything. They do everything with these beams, and it starts to sort of form like a blood golem around itself in this beam of light, and she's just running. So, but then she's out in the woods, and she turns around, and there she is, sort of a perfect, clean hair is all perfect, unblemished version of herself, looking sort of curious and approaching her. And in like an embrace, and she's coming in for a hug, and so she hugs it, and then it stabs her in the stomach, right?
It stabs her in the stomach, but then she has a box cutter
knife,
X-Acto knife, and she cuts its throat and kills it. And I thought that was a really interesting scene where, she holds it and kind of hugs it and I just thought, that was really not something they typically, I think, would show in a movie where a person is like killing a clone of themselves.
Right.
But I just thought, imagine what you would be going through in your mind if there were an exact duplicate of you and you've just killed it and it's in your arms. You know what I mean? That seems like kind of a natural reaction
that was the first moment in this film. And we're near the end now. But that was the first moment in this film where I felt like it was overtly symbolic. And I started thinking, oh, okay, I need to start thinking about this movie as, not allegorical, but it's telling a story using heavy symbolism. So I tried to think back, because before it was just it was a young woman, and you presume you're going to find out why the town doesn't like her, right? It's pretty sloppy filmmaking if you don't, and you do. But I'm like, I thought that was just sort of seasoning, and this is a good old home invasion, alien chase, aliens trying to get you movie. But then I started to think, oh no, I'm not trying to say something per se, but they're working on another level here, because I'm like, to take time out and have that thing turn into a doppelganger of her, and then the hug and the stab and the counter stab. It all started to feel to me like I'm supposed to start to see the meanings of these things, right? And I hadn't been thinking that the film really had any meanings, that it was just a chase story, right? And I think they double down on that. From there on, it becomes even more overt, right? Because it's soon after that she does get beamed up into the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of aliens in there, and she's frozen. One of them sort of touches her forehead, and then we see her memories. We see why the town hates her. She has killed her friend. And it's clear from the re-showing of it that they were having an argument when they were like 12. And her friend Maud shoves her. And in her rage, she grabs a rock and wheels around and cracks Maud in the head, from which we presume Maud dies. So there's a Cain and Abel moment there where one sister kills the other with a rock to the head. I mean, not a car accident, right? But hits her in the head with a rock. I mean, that's Cain and Abel,
Right?
Like 12-year-olds do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then I started to think, okay, well, this is religious. Some of the aliens are doing things that aren't like crucifix, but they have very angular arms, and they're sort of doing these symbolic gesticulations that on one hand look like they're sort of signaling to the ship, but I'm like, you guys are telekinetic. You're doing a semaphore here to signal to the ship. Like, it had a quasi-religious vibe to it. So all of this religion stuff sort of started spinning in my head. And then all the Prometheus stuff where he's tying that to Christianity and sort of implying that the origins of Christianity are somehow from the creators. And, I'm talking the whole time. You talk now. So we find out what happened.
Yeah. So we find out what happened. And then it's basically like I'm guessing the aliens at that point learn what happened to her too. And you see sort of close up on the alien, and they're expressionless, but it's maybe like they, feel concerned or whatever. And this is where I'd read interview with the director, and he said he didn't want to make it like he didn't thought it would be corny if they had something like, the alien has a tear rolled down its cheek or something.
No, you think?
But he said, that the idea that you wanted to get is that they feel a little bit bad for her. And so then ultimately what happens is I don't remember if they beam her back down or not, but the ending of the movie is it's like she's back in the house. Oh, go ahead.
There is one key moment. So after they are sort of reading her mind, and we see that this thing happened, and we see that she was close to her mom, and we see that her mom died, there is a moment where she's sitting at a table opposite Maud, and she reaches out and touches Maud's hand.
Yeah, because they're basically like they've reenacted everything, and it's sort of like these 3D representations of everybody.
But then there's this moment that didn't happen, that is a mental construct, where she reaches out and touches Maud's hand as if to say, can you ever forgive me? Right? I didn't mean it. I wish, whatever you want to read into that moment, it's nonverbal. But it is a supplicating move, and it is a apologetic move, right? And it's a tender move. It's a loving move where they touch. And that's the moment where we cut to the alien, who's always like, oh, it's beautiful. Or whatever the alien is thinking. Or, this one's different. But then the end.
And the okay, yeah. So the end is, so it's like it's basically like, so at the beginning of the movie, we see her, come out of her house, and she looks all happy and everything, and you don't know any of this yet about the problems with her life, and then we do this at the end again, where it's sort of like her coming out of the the house, and she looks happy and everything. And one thing that we didn't talk about, there was one scene earlier in the film where she's playing a record, like an old, like 50s or 60s record. And there's some kind of like, she's like dancing by herself, right? Where I think does she have
on
like
any door?
Even does she have like the little, the things that you used to be able to buy where you could have like the feet placed out, for where to put your feet. And so it's her outside, and there's like this dance area that's been set up, and it's a bunch of the other townspeople that have the alien things in their neck, but they're all happy now. They're not angry with her, or, wanting to fight her or anything. And she's dancing with them. And
they're doing the dance like a Hollywood musical.
Like a Hollywood musical. Yeah, exactly.
And it's all choreographed and everybody's having a great time. And at the end of which, she looks directly into the camera as you would in a musical. And she does this sort of a gesture of like, she's breathlessly smiling, she's wildly happy. And it struck me as a Twilight Zone moment, right? I mean, it's a very presentational, very referential, like Twilight Zone moment. And the camera kind of pulls up above this idyllic miniature it's like the town as it would have appeared in her little miniature diorama that she built at her house. And as it pulls up, we see the spaceships flying. And there's multiple spaceships all over the place. The aliens have invaded, and for whatever reason, she gets it. And my first thought was, well, she doesn't have a thing in her throat. So they just let her be her and live in this fantasy world that she wanted to, because they found her story moving, or because they decided she deserved redemption somehow. Still invading, but we don't need to possess her because she's redeemable or something. And then I thought, well, when you have one of those things in your throat, it's an idea she's not going to think she has one in her throat. When she had one in her throat, there wasn't a thing in her throat in her fantasy world. So I'm like, well, they just put one in her throat, and this is the reality in which she gets to live now.
Well, so this is the point where I had read the interview with the director, and I think I initially so you get about 3/4 of the way through the movie, and it's one of these movies where even though she kills some of the aliens, they're so powerful that, as a whole, with their telekinetic powers, and they can, freeze her to where she can't move, and all this. So you're thinking, there's no way that she can defeat them. She can't, unless it's some bogus thing like, we've seen in other movies where she gives
water is
or she gives them a virus or something and it kills all of them or whatever. But it's like, there's no way that she can defeat them. So
and the name of the film is No One Will Save You. And when the title thing happens about a minute in, it fills the entire screen. It's literally 2 inches from your face is no one will save you.
And so anyway, I really felt like they'd kind of painted themselves into a corner, because it's like, how do you get out of this? And I think the film does not tell you this. And I think when, the filmmaker has to explain reasons for things, that gets kind of precarious. But after I read this, I thought, okay, I can go with this. The director said that the way he viewed it is the aliens viewed her as such a good adversary that it was like, well, we'd rather just kind of sort of throw a bone to her than to have to keep fighting her. Even though it seems like they could have destroyed her if they wanted to, but it's sort of like they respected her as an adversary, basically.
I see. Like, well, if we put a thing in her throat, she just rips it out of her throat. So I guess we'd just give her everything let her live in the world that she wants to live in, and that'll just give her what she wants.
Right. And I also was thinking, I thought, okay, would these aliens feel, they did this because they felt sorry for her? And I just thought, that seems implausible. But the director also said that it would be kind of like, even though we are not on the same level as a dog, and we could obviously, destroy a dog if we wanted to, we can also feel sorry for a dog, right? Have pity on that. So that's sort of what that's what he's saying, is that like they sort of pitied her. They pitied her, and they also looked at her as an adversary. So it's sort of like, hey, and But aside from them, she also needed, what happened, and it's not like they would have purposely done this, but she was able to finally have closure and forgive herself. So it's sort of like she can ultimately be, happy now at this point, which she'd never had the ability to before over the last 10 years. And the director also said, I don't know if there's, maybe there is. He didn't say anything about symbolism at all.
Right.
But he said also, he said, I kicked this girl's ass for, almost 90 minutes of the runtime of the movie. And I wanted her to have a happy ending, essentially. He's like, I liked the character so much that I wanted things to work out for him. But after I initially wasn't that crazy about the ending. And then after, more I thought about it, I was like, kind of liked it. And it was obviously unique. And also, again, I think ultimately I prefer an ending like this than to have her actually defeat them, which just seems like that would be impossible.
Right. If it was Nicolas Cage, he would defeat the alien invasion.
Yeah.
And if it was Invasions of the Body Snatchers, you don't get any kind of happy ending. It's a zombie movie. Eventually everybody dies. Nobody makes it out. So this is a nice, that's why I think it's Twilight Zone. It's surreal, but it also tries to send the kids off to bed without giving them nightmares. There's a prime time element to it. But that's interesting hearing all of that, thinking about it that way. They did put a thing in her throat and she literally reached down her own throat and pulled it out. So you're like, well, that doesn't work. Right. And I don't know why they feel like they need to have a 1-to-1. We tried cloning her and that didn't work. Well, just kill her. It's like, why do you need one of her? Who cares? What are the aliens doing with the local population? It's not why even put a parasite in them and control them anyway? It's like, well, we
get no explanation.
Do you? That. There's no, there's just no. There's no, why take over people? They can clearly breathe our atmosphere, and right? It's never clear to me why they do that, other than that it's a scary, gross thing to have in the movie.
Yeah.
But by the end, they're kind of like, well, let's think about this for a second. We take over this town. It's a piece of cake. There's this one young woman living living alone in her house with her little fantasy world model of the way she wished life was. And almost from the get-go, she just starts body counting us. Everybody we send in there to see what she's like and, maybe whatever. She's just icing us.
Yeah.
And we did, so we got one down her throat. That didn't take. All right, get her up here. Let's take a look. And they see this story and it's like, oh, all she wants is she just wants to be forgiven by her friend, basically, and live in, she just wants the life she had, except she wants this sense of forgiveness and to be one with a perfect little town. So it was, well, let's just give her that. Let's just give her that.
And then we don't have to bother with
she'll stop making waves. We'll give her whatever she wants to the movie version of the life she wants, and problem solved. She'll stay put. But again, it's like, well, what are they having? Why bother?
Another thing that the director said is, and you kind of touched on this earlier on, when she encounters the first alien, he comes in and, he doesn't just immediately go after her. He comes in and he's rummaging through the refrigerator and
he's poking around,
looking at other things in the house. And he said she was number 8 on his list of things to get to. It was he was almost sort of on a fact-finding mission where it's oh, how does this thing work? And what does this do? Because they'd never seen any of these things.
He's not even before. Middle management. He's just one of the guys they sent down with a clipboard to be like, oh, okay, carbon. Okay, they consume food. Oh, interesting. It has that air to it. He's not hunting her. And then he hears the noise and he's like, oh, is there a person upstairs? There's no fear. It's not like he's creeping around and he's afraid that the person upstairs is a threat. But he's like, oh, someone's home, and he's coming up after her.
Yeah. And I got the feeling, I don't know how you felt about this. Like we said, there's several different kinds of aliens. So the way it seemed sort of to me is the gray aliens are kind of they're the bosses, basically. They're maybe the most intelligent ones. And then you had, I don't know what the little dwarf guy was exactly.
Yeah.
But he was there to fight her, I guess. And then I felt like the big spider things were kind of like the attack dogs. I don't know how you felt about that, but
I mean, they seemed either to be different, casts,
but none of that is really
species,
explained.
no, none of that's really explained. The
This
little
was,
one's very
I mean,
aggro, and the big one gets very aggro. But
I guess it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, it's not necessarily the point, but this was one of those rare movies where I felt like I could have used another 15 or 20 minutes that sort of flesh things, because I would like to know what the point of having the humans with the things in their necks and all that, because we don't see very much of that at all.
I agree with you. I don't need a ton of didactic explainating, but I did have those questions, and it doesn't ruin my enjoyment of the movie not to know those, but it would have scratched, even to some gesture towards it would have scratched an itch in my brain.
He also said there, and I think it's fine that they left this out. He said in the original story, or maybe, I don't even know if it made it to the script or not, but he said they initially had planned to show more what happened to her after she killed her friend, because he said basically there was time that she spent in like a juvenile detention place, and
a sort of backstory,
and again
how she got so scrappy.
Yeah, and again we we have no idea what happened to her mother, and that she lives, and it's like she doesn't seem to have a job or anything. She just has this giant beautiful house that she lives in and makes models and stuff.
Yeah, none of that.
Maybe she was left a bunch of money. I don't know.
None of that bugged me too much. I thought, okay, well, she's scrappy. I mean, heroines in horror movies are scrappy, and she lives alone. What struck me as weird was that the whole town would revile her so.
Yeah, you would think
so voicelessly, like they just loathe her. Literally, this is presuming this was, supposed to be set nowish or in 2022 or whenever, the tombstone says she died in 2012. So it's been 10 years. And she bumps into the parents of Maud in the police station. Her father was the chief of police. And Maud's mother spits in her face. And you're like, some people never find forgiveness, but, and it was your daughter, but this was your daughter's best friend. They were 12 and it was 10 years ago. I'm not saying they'd be, oh, hi, hello, dear. They'd get over it per se, but time changes a lot. But if it happened yesterday, you spit in someone's face, that is some baller stuff. I mean,
you could see that maybe the parents would, maybe never forgive her and always hate her, but you wouldn't think everybody in the town would hate her. You know what I mean? And she doesn't, as she's,
neighbor gives her the stink eye, right? The male guy gives her the stink eye.
We don't know much about her, but she obviously feels remorseful about this, and it doesn't seem that, we're not presented anything else that like she was a serial killer or something, what I mean? So there are, even horrible people have friends, I mean, there would be somebody in the town that would feel sorry for her or like her. Or there would be a boy that would be attracted to her or something,
And she is a pretty, clean, well put together young woman. You know what I mean?
Intelligent,
exactly. And she's artistic.
Yeah.
And the house looks really nice, and she looks really nice, and she radiates this kind of sunny energy. And you're like, And once you see it, you're like, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't like a car accident. She hit her in the head with a rock. But she didn't like break into their house while she was asleep in bed and bash her skull in with a rock 16 times, right? They had a fight. She picked up a rock and knocked her friend in the head. It's pretty clear she didn't intend to kill her friend.
I think she wasn't planning murder. You know, it was an accident.
And there's, I'm reading a lot
fit
of
rage. You know?
There's a moment in the police station where it seems as though everyone is going to speak. Mm-hmm. She comes face to face with them. She does a sharp inhale, like she's going to speak. And then that's the point at which the mother spits in her face. What? Yeah, I'm doing a. 43. I don't remember what I was saying.
You were saying, you know, there was like a moment that they were going to speak, and then the mom spits in her face.
Yeah, spits in her face, and then there's a moment, and the mom sort of then not storms off, but leaves, and she's standing there with spittle on her face, looking shocked. And there's a moment where the chief of police, the father of Maud, looks very torn, you know, and he almost wants to say something like, look, we know you didn't mean to do it, or something like that. Not maybe absolution, but you know, she's just never been able to get past it, or something right. Human as a chief of police, right? I mean, this guy has seen it all. And it was like they were 12. I mean, my heart will never mend, but at the same time, I don't think you meant to kill our daughter, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't have those lines. He doesn't have those lines. He just sort of, he sort of goes and follows his wife.
And that plays into so many ways in this movie. They get around dialogue, you know, which is a lot of clever things that they do.
Did the director talk at all about, I mean, because there are many times that.
No, I didn't read anything about that.
It to be a whole Shakespeare scene, but there's many times where you would just have words in passing with somebody to make it feel like actual life. And there's a little bit of this that feels like the Twilight Zone the whole way through, because literally nobody speaks in it. And when she does have words, it feels like A Quiet Place, right? There's just this super close focus, and she's like, "I'm sorry," or something. It's just the fact that there are any words at all are so highlighted.
Yeah.
Did he talk? He didn't talk at all about that?
I thought that was just really creative and really just they expertly handled that, you know.
Well, they did. And I love show, don't tell. You know, you should be able to make a compelling movie without any dialogue at all. It's a visual medium, but it got to the point where they were, and that scene is a great case in point, where they're so clearly trying to avoid there being any dialogue. Yeah. That I was kind of like, talk about that a little bit. Like, what's wrong with a little bit of dialogue here and there? Like, it's such a deliberate choice. Mm-hmm. Did somebody dare you? Like, what is it?
I haven't seen anything about that, but like you said, it's almost like a silent film, you know. And also, you know, I was thinking with the townspeople, we know there's a bus that goes in and out of the town. So at some point, presumably a new person would come there that wouldn't have any pre-existing knowledge of any of this and be like, hey, I think she's kind of nice. Why does everybody hate her? You know?
Some people are leaving town. I mean, it's like the aliens seem to be taking over everywhere. So what difference does it make?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're coming after her on the bus because they've identified her as one that killed one of their own. I don't know. It's just never made clear.
I don't know. So was the ending satisfying to you? I mean, would you have preferred it in a different way, or did you?
No, I think the ending was satisfying. I think it changed so much. It really was a Twilight Zone feeling ending. I liked that it wasn't, a Hollywood action movie where It's not
Yeah.
Independence Day where they defeat the alien invasion. I like we've already mentioned, I would have liked a little more information on what the aliens are here for and what do they want. Like, what's the agenda? That
It's a
doesn't have
very
any
tight.
direct bearing on this one. This particular woman doesn't care,
Yeah.
but as a viewer, I was curious.
Yeah. It's a very tight, basically 90 minutes. And, so yeah, another 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, I think I would have been fine with. This was similar to Prey that we watched. I guess that was last year, in that it was a Hulu exclusive, and this was another one that I had read a lot of. I just read a lot of comments on Twitter of people saying, they felt like they just kind of dumped this on Hulu, and that this could have been a theatrical release. I don't know how well it would have done in comparison to Prey, because this was an original thing. I think Prey probably would have done really well in the theater just based on the, that it was tied to Predator. I'm not sure how this would have done, but
are people still going to the movie? Like, I know COVID's not over, but I know we've all just sort of agreed to like not be
just
doing
pretend like it doesn't exist
anymore.
Yeah.
And I used to go to the movies pretty regularly. Like, it was a thing I liked to do. I'm like, oh, go out to movie. And I had screens. I could watch it at home. But I liked to go to the movies. And it kind of broke the movies for me. I've been to the movies, but I don't go anymore. I'm like, until it comes out on stream.
Yeah, I don't think it's completely returned to normal, but you had Barbie that made over $1 billion, and I think Oppenheimer is close to $1 billion. And horror movies are still making a lot of money. They always open big. So, but yeah, I don't know. You also need original content for streamers. So
Yeah.
I'm not upset that this wasn't in it.
Well, I'm sure they did the math. I'm sure they did like, if this gets buzz, then I would be curious. Does it say on there what the budget was for this?
I will take a look. You talk some, and I will see what I can.
While you are doing our homework, I will reiterate that our handle is Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That is our handle. We are on the socials. We're on YouTube. We're on your favorite podcast app. Thank you. Like and subscribe. Yay. It's so nice to have you listening to us.
So they list the budget as $22.8 million, which that's not much at all.
That is not much.
The only area, to be a little bit nitpicky, this looked great. I thought it was shot really well. I thought the CGI, the aliens, I think, are pretty much entirely CGI, and the CGI was okay. It wasn't terrible.
It was okay.
It didn't take me out of the movie, but it wasn't amazing or anything. Right. I liked the design of the aliens.
Yeah, they were pretty much.
They looked good.
Yeah.
But I think that was where the low budget kind of showed a little bit. That was, they weren't, maybe in a bigger budget movie that the aliens would have looked a little more.
Yeah, the squiggly thing looked.
But other than that,
CGI.
I mean, there wasn't. Yeah, other than that, there wasn't, and that's pretty nitpicky, really. I don't think there was anything else to really criticize it about.
Right. Overall, taken as a whole, I thought this was thoroughly enjoyable. Like, are there things we can critique about it? Yeah. But it felt like a very small movie done very well.
And I hope that this does well enough that this director will get to do more stuff like this, because I wonder, thought it was pretty impressive.
What was the budget on Prey? Is that something you can look up quickly?
Let me take a look.
Because it has a similar small movie feel.
65 million.
65, so a bit more. Yeah, that's more like a regular dramatic film. I know 20, believe me, give me $20 million. I'll figure out a way never to work again in my life.
Yeah.
But But for a movie that feels like it could have been a theatrical release, that's not a huge budget. I mean, obviously, people make movies for $150,000, but they don't have effects like this. The effects aren't
Yeah.
good like this. I mean, I watched a little behind the scenes thing on YouTube, and where they were sort of having doors blow off and the way they had the wires all rigged, and it was very professionally done. And all that stuff costs money. I mean, you gotta hire
Sure.
people that know how to do that, and there's safety issues, and you want it to look right. And this whole movie, there's a lot of practical effects in this movie, and there's a lot of CGI.
And presumably, even though the house looks very real, I would guess that they probably built the house for the movie rather than being an actual house. You know?
It's probably a combination of both. It
could be, yeah.
Probably for the exteriors. I doubt that they built a house.
Yeah.
But they probably did build some interior sets to, augment. But anyway, all of that stuff adds up. And what you save on a movie that looks this good, I don't know what our leads, I'm sure she's doing pretty good, but she's not Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? What you don't have is A-list names in this, and that's how you save. That's how you keep it at 20 and you don't start pushing 100. It's just paying A-list actors salaries these days is a lot.
And people talk about this a lot, but now the reason why this got dumped and kind of the same thing happened with Prey is it was part of the acquisition of 20th Century Fox that, when Disney took them over, and I guess Disney just didn't want to bother with releasing these movies, and they're putting them on Hulu. But, these $20 million, $30 million, $60 million movies, I think people are almost begging for more and more of these to be made,
Well, was it perfect? No. And Prey wasn't perfect either, but they both felt really fresh.
Yeah.
They both had original visions. It didn't feel like a Michael Bay movie or even a studio Michael Bay knockoff where they hired some younger person and said, can you make a movie look like can you make a Michael Bay movie, basically? So you have enough. I mean, I don't know how much freedom you actually have at a $20 million budget. That's money. That's still significant money. People are going to be, but I think that's a lower stakes gamble for a studio. Than and so it's not exactly a petri dish, but I think they're taking people that they think will do a good job, and they're giving them a little bit of actual capital and money, and they're like, yeah, great. Go make a movie. We're investing in you as a young filmmaker. And I think what you get is a fresh result. And you're right. I feel starved for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this would have been no better, or maybe not even as good, if you put a name actor in this role, somebody, like I say, she was great.
I agree with you. And I agree with you. And it makes me think of the one we just watched, right? It makes me think of Inherent Vice. I thought all those celebrity faces in those roles, that was fun, but it was distracting ultimately. Mm-hmm. It became this kind of celebrity showcase. And, I think that takes away from the movie, honestly. And in this one, I was like, who is she? She looks so familiar to me. And she's clearly great. I mean, she does a fantastic job. And I just watched, because of this and for some other reasons, I just watched another movie she was in, and she was fantastic in that. Very, very different character. Mm-hmm. So she is a rising star for sure.
But, I'm trying to think of I'm kind of at a loss for somebody who would be her age that's a big star. I don't know. You put Selena Gomez in this role or whatever, and you've got to pay her whatever, she makes.
Right.
And it wouldn't be any better, I wouldn't think,
It's hard to imagine somebody else doing a better job in this role. There was no parts in it watching her performance where I was like, didn't quite land that. I thought she absolutely aced it.
It has to show all these different ranges of emotion. And like we've said, without speaking most of the time.
And she did it very, very ably, very, very
Mhm.
ably. And my problems with it have nothing to do with her execution of the role and more to do with what felt like the filmmaker's insistence on not having any dialogue and leaving things
Yeah.
deliberately cryptic. And I think on the one hand, it's kind of effective because here we are talking about it, hungry for more. You got to leave them wanting more, right?
Mhm.
It makes me more likely to go back and watch it again and see if I can't
Mhm.
pick up little clues that I missed. But on the other hand, if it's after your first viewing, it's a kind of an itch that I'm just like,
Mhm.
you could have given me a little bit more on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But none of that's her. I think there's a slam dunk. Slam dunk.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
You really care for her too. You really care about
Mhm.
her. She's an interesting looking actor. She's
Mhm.
kind of a sharp nose. I mean, she's very pretty.
Yeah.
But she's got an interesting face. She doesn't just have a magazine face, you know?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think she's got a bright future.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
clearly going places. I can't wait to see what else she's in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're about at time. I did our little handle. Do we know what we want to do next?
Well, you had talked about that you watched kind of her other big movie, which was Booksmart.
Oh, yeah,
So we
yeah,
talked
right.
about doing
That's the
that.
movie. That's the movie I just was Booksmart, which is an Olivia Wilde. She
Directed by,
directed
yeah,
that, right? Prior, and
which
we
we've,
did
yeah.
Don't Worry, Darling not too long ago.
Yes.
My friend Melissa, who's a filmmaker here in town, is a big, big fan of that film. And that was one of the
Mhm.
other reasons why I watched it, is because she's been Booksmart this and Booksmart that. And I was like, I actually haven't
Mhm.
seen it. And she said, well, you got to watch it. And then I saw this and I'm like, oh, well, okay. The universe is telling me I got to watch this movie. And I did watch it last night. It's great.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
So, I mean, I'd love to get Melissa on with us.
Have a special guest. That would be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we haven't done that in a long time. Travis also would like to do another episode with us at some point.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And I think now that
Yeah.
we're using Riverside, that'll be easier. We can be wherever we are, and there'll just be three voices.
Okay, cool.
So
That sounds fun.
cool. I guess maybe we'll do, I guess our next one will be Booksmart.
Booksmart. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And so I guess both of us would recommend this one.
I would definitely recommend this one, especially
Yeah.
if you have Hulu and you like horror and you're looking for someone to watch. 90 minutes, nothing to object to there. I just thought it was really fresh and really great.
I agree. And I think this would appeal to a pretty wide audience. I think it's PG-13, so it's not like super violent or anything.
It is scary.
It's scary. But it's not, I didn't have nightmares or anything like that.
No, and it's not gross.
I want to tell you,
there's like, there's some creepy crawly, the thing in the throat is gross, but it's not like Saw. It's not like people being dismembered.
No. We'll have to talk about this later, and this is maybe one that we could cover at some point, because I think you've seen it. I watched Jacob's Ladder this week.
Oh, yes.
And I had not seen it since I was like 16 or 17 or whatever. And I remember it as being terrifying.
Right.
And I'm not kidding. I mean, I like horror and I watch a lot of horror movies, but I was going to start it one night and I was like, I don't know if I want to watch that before bed. And then I finally watched it like 2 nights ago. And it turns out it's way more of a drama than I remembered it being. I the horror stuff stood out in my mind, but
well,
I was shocked.
Once you know this secret, once you know the shape of the whole thing, I think it takes on a very different cast.
And I think watching it at 50 versus watching it at 16 is also different too.
That's true, but it's a testament, because it's a drama in which all this increasingly crazy stuff happens. And that effect of the guy in the corner with his head going on, nobody'd done that before. I hadn't seen that anywhere. Now you see it a lot.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, nobody even knows where this is from. I'm like, it's from Jacob's Ladder. It was really unsettling, You
watch it and then you're like, wow, a lot of movies ripped this off.
Because it was so effective. And by the time you got to the end, you had gone on a real emotional roller coaster ride. But it was not overt horror. It was a drama that got increasingly unsettling and uncanny to the point of being really. You didn't first think this was a supernatural movie, but by the third quarter of it, you're like, are demons real? I mean, didn't we just see? Like, is this a gods and demons movie? You know, and then you get the. We shouldn't spoil it here.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil the ending because maybe we'll cover this at some point.
But it's a testament to you remember the horror of it, to how effective
and that
a slow burn
that stuff stood out in my
mind.
mind.
It was a slow burn, yeah.
That for the last 30 years or whatever it's been, I have said to when people say like, "Oh, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen?" Like that would be one that I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen." And then I watched it now, and it's like those are still horrific scenes, but it's very touching and sad.
Well, and his paranoia and distress is so effective in it. That's Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins,
and his performance in it as a guy who just doesn't know what's going on, and there's a strong element of it. He thinks he's going insane. That's a very plausible thing that occurs to him, and that it just ratchets up and ratchets up and ratchets up to the point where it's really harrowing.
Another, I'll say this last thing, and then I know we need to end things. But I was really into Tim Robbins at that time. We do The Player? We did The Player, right?
The Player,
we talked about it. We did The Player, and that one I loved. And another one that I was just looking through his filmography that I think would be fun to do, because I think it's probably one of these movies that has become more, it was sort of ahead of its time. Did you ever see Bob Roberts?
I did. Yeah. I thought you were going to say Shawshank.
No. Yeah, everybody's seen it. But Bob Roberts, I think, would be fun to visit now, because I think it almost kind of predicted a lot of the way things have gone with politics, you know.
We could do Bob Roberts.
Yeah, that would be fun to do sometime. But Booksmart for next time.
Booksmart for next time. Join us. Chris and Chris Talk Movies @gmail.com. Let us know what you think and make a suggestion and be our friends.
Be our friends, please.
And thanks for joining us today. And unless you have anything else to add, then Chris Huddleston and Chris Ferry will talk to you all next week.